Welcome back to another edition of Oil Spills. My name is Zach Laing. I am the news director and senior columnist. And today we are going to be diving into some trade talk, seeing if there's a couple players out there in the trade market that could be of interest to the Edmonton Oilers. Now, earlier this morning, Daily Faceoff's Frank Saravalli posted his first trade targets list of the season, and there was a couple of players that were sort of linked to the Edmonton Oilers. Right off the top, the biggest name, Bo Horvat, number one on Frank's list. He wrote that Bo Horvat is a player who the Vancouver Canucks could be looking to offload at some point in the next couple of months. He's likely their best tradable asset right now in terms of looking for a little bit of a rebuild. The team and Horvat haven't really had much contract discussions, and earlier this month, President of Hockey Operations Jim Rutherford said on the radio, quote, "The better he plays, the better return we can get for him," end quote. Now, Saravalli went on to say there's no shortage of teams that are interested in either a rental or as a long-term fit, naming the Colorado Avalanche, Detroit Red Wings, Boston Bruins, and the Edmonton Oilers as some of the teams who might have interest. Now, Horvat is a player that the Oilers fans know well. He was taken in the same draft as Darnell Nurse, and the Oilers have seen him quite a few times over the last number of years. He's been off to a great start this season, scoring 15 goals in 19 games. And the thing is the team just signed JT Miller to a big contract last offseason, meaning that Horvat could be on his way out of town. Now, I think Bo Horvat would be a great player on the Oilers' third line. He's a guy who's played big minutes in the past in Vancouver. Bumping him down the lineup in Edmonton would allow the Oilers to kind of run three centers, going McDavid, Draisaitl, and Bo Horvat. Would keep Ryan Nugent-Hopkins from ever having to slide down into that third line role again, and really help solidify the Oilers' bottom six and provide a strong scoring punch. Another player that could be of interest to the Edmonton Oilers is ex-Calgary Flames Sean Monahan. Yes, you heard that right. I think there's a world where Monahan could absolutely fit in on this Oilers roster. Now, the Calgary Flames had to trade him to the Montreal Canadiens this last offseason to be able to free up some cap space, and Monahan's had a bit of a resurgence in his career. He's got 10 points in his first 18 games with the Canadiens, and he's a guy who's posting some solid defensive numbers. Now, I don't know if he'd have the same offensive ceiling that Bo Horvat could have in a depth role with the team, but I think Monahan would be a pretty cheap asset to be able to go out and pick up for the Edmonton Oilers. And on top of that, the storyline of him being an ex-Flame, now joining the Oilers as they look for a big playoff run, could be a pretty interesting story to follow. Now, defensively, there's a couple of players that Frank Saravalli listed that could make sense. Of course, there's always the talk of Jacob Chychrun. I'm not sure if that's something that's going to happen for the Oilers. I think there was a chance for them to be able to do that deal this past offseason, but they chose not to. First and foremost, John Klingberg playing with the Anaheim Ducks, the big right-shot puck-moving defenseman. He signed a one-year deal with the Ducks this last offseason for $7 million, with kind of the understanding that if things didn't really work out with Anaheim this year, he'd be a great asset to be able to trade at some point. Now, Klingberg has a no-move clause, a no-trade clause that expires on January 1st of this year, but could the Edmonton Oilers be one of those teams that maybe look to jump the gun a little bit, try to get ahead of the market? Certainly possible. Now, the money's going to be a little bit more difficult for Klingberg to make it work, but I think it'd be a great option for the Oilers on the right side of their defense. Another name that jumped out as a potential option is Columbus Blue Jackets defenseman Vladislav Gavrikov. He's got a $2.8 million contract that is pretty cheap right now, one the Oilers could likely fit under their salary cap. He's a big, strong sort of defense-first defenseman. He doesn't really have the offensive upside that John Klingberg would bring, but for the Oilers, playing defense is their biggest issue right now. Now, the big thing with Gavrikov is it sounds like there could be a high asking price. According to Frank Saravalli, the deal could look similar to that of David Savard for a number of years ago, where the Blue Jackets got a first and a third round pick back. Now, Gavrikov's still a young defenseman, but I'm not entirely sure that these are the assets I'd want to be spending on him. I think he's a decent enough defenseman in his own zone, but I think there could be better options for the Edmonton Oilers out there if they were really serious about looking to move their first round pick this year. One bonus name for you all is that of Ryan Reeves from the New York Rangers. The big tough guy is a player that the Edmonton Oilers could certainly have some interest in. He's been a healthy scratch in 4 of the last 5 games for the Rangers, and according to Frank Saravalli, it doesn't sound like the asking price is too high at all. Reeves is carrying a $1.75 million deal right now, and it sounds like the Rangers are just looking to kind of get out of that cap to give themselves a little bit of flexibility. Now for the Oilers, they're in a cap crunch of their own, but I mean, it could make sense, I guess, for the Oilers to bring in Reeves. You know, they're looking for some bite on their third and fourth line, and Reeves is a guy who would definitely do that. He's a big physical player. He can drop the gloves anytime with anybody in the entire NHL. Now, I'm not really a huge fan of this deal because at the end of the day, we need to be concerned about the on-ice impacts that any player has, and I don't think Reeves has very positive ones. Now, that being said, we do know that the fans at Edmonton and the organization as a whole love strong physical players. You look at a guy like Zach Laing, who'd been around Edmonton for a number of years. So Reeves could make sense as a guy who could come on the Oilers' fourth line, play, 6, 7, 8 minutes a night, drop the gloves every once in a while, and try and bring some energy to this team. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Drop a note for me down below and let me know what you think of any of these players. Is there somebody on Frank's list that jumped out to you that I didn't name? What do you think about these options that I did name?